The Cecil Soil Conservation District proudly presents Spry Brothers as our 2023 Cooperator of the Year. Spry Brothers Incorporated is a farming operation whose main partners are Ralph Corky Gooner, Steve Kraus, Mark Kraus, and William Bubb. The entity farms over 4,000 acres, much of which is rented ground. The home farm is located in Elkton, Maryland, and bordered to the west by the Big Elk Creek, to the east by Appleton Road, and to the north by Interstate 95. The property has seen many changes over the years. The home farm is primarily planted for grain production, with a farmstead that covers 10 acres. The remaining property consists of riparian woodlands, a large shallow wildlife area, and a pond. The Spry Brothers operation has encompassed several generations of farmers who have poured their life into agriculture and conservation and been dedicated to their rural community. In 1928, Corky's grandparents, Julian Spry Sr. and Christine Edmondson Spry, moved from Delaware and bought the home farm on Appleton Road, known at the time as the West Amwell Farm. The Sprys ran a dairy farm with a herd of about 60 cows on the property for years. In the early 1940s, as Julian Sr.'s health declined, two of his sons, Julian Jr. and William, known as Bill, began taking over farming operations. By then, the original dairy herd had been sold. In the late 1940s, Bill began to rebuild a new dairy herd. Julian began renting an additional farm along Singerly Road. The heifers were kept at the farm on Singerly Road, and the milking cows were at the Appleton Road farm. Corky moved to the farm around 1948 with his family. Corky's grandparents also continued to live on the property. In addition to running the dairy farm, Bill and Julian, doing business as Spry Brothers, offered custom farming, which was mostly baling and threshing. Corky remembers that the brothers worked very hard. When Corky was young, Bill put a husking peg on him and had him husk several shocks of corn by hand, though the farm had a corn picker by then. When he asked Bill why he made him do this, Bill told him that he wanted him to experience how they had done it. By the 1960s, the dairy herd had been sold once again. In 1968, the two brothers acquired the home farm from their mother. Eventually, they also purchased the farm on Singerly Road and then another on Grove Neck Road. Steve Kraus started working for Julian and Bill in 1973, right out of high school. Corky and Steve became invested in part of the operation when Julian and Bill incorporated the business in 1994. A sense of humor helped leaven the hard work. Corky recalls a summer day in the mid-1990s when they were all standing around and Bill jumped on the tractor to go work the ground. Little did he know the hydraulics had dropped overnight, and he disked a swath through the entire lawn on the way to the field. Afterward, Bill joked that I never fired a man in my life, but I would have fired the guy that did that. Corky and Steve continued farming and raised their families. Corky has 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren. Steve has 3 children and 9 grandchildren. Both enjoy spending time with their families and sharing the love of farming and the outdoors with a new generation. In addition to grain, members of the operation also enjoy growing their own produce. Corky maintains a large garden on the home farm where he grows different types of produce, including lima beans, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and broccoli. He also tried sweet corn, cantaloupes, and sweet potatoes. But now Steve grows the sweet corn because Corky found he was sharing too much with the local deer and raccoons. Steve also maintains a large garden on Singerly Road where he grows many things, including lots of sweet corn. Spry Brothers now includes William Bubb and Steve's son Mark and produces corn, beans, wheat, straw, and hay. In addition to Corky, Steve, Mark, and Will, the operation employs several truck drivers and seasonal equipment operators. The operation runs 7 John Deere tractors, 3 Case combines, and 1 grain cart with a 1,300 bushel capacity. They also have 5 tractor trailers, all with hopper bottoms. Most of their maintenance work is performed in-house with the exception of engine work. The tractors and the combines utilize GPS and auto steer. Steve notes that the auto steer makes things much nicer and more accurate. The GPS system provides records of all planting and harvesting for each farm, precisely tracking inputs and yields. The Spry Brothers installed their first grain bins in the 1960s. They began with 3 batch dryers with a total storage of about 18,000 bushels. Natural gas is used for drying. Currently, they can store about 450,000 bushels of grain in commercial-grade, continuous slow dryers. Their corn, soybeans, and wheat are all dried on the home farm. Corky notes that one big advantage of drying their own grain is not spending time sitting in the line at the mill. Grain bins also provide more flexibility since the grain markets reward storage by allowing them to wait to sell until prices are optimal. Grain is mostly shipped to feed mills, but this depends on the market. The Spry Brothers have a long history of working with the Cecil Soil Conservation District, dating back to at least 1963. In 1967, Bill Spry signed their first Cooperator agreement with the district. Over the decades, the Spry Brothers have worked with the district to implement many best management practices. Best management practices improve water quality and soil health, prevent erosion, and help protect the Chesapeake Bay. On the home farm, Spry Brothers have installed many grassed waterways, a shallow wildlife area, and a pond, and they have improved the banks of the Big Elk Creek, which runs through and around their farm. Grassed waterways and lined outlets are used to reduce soil erosion and protect water quality. Grassed waterways are vegetated channels that slow the velocity of water down over their wide, shallow spans and direct the runoff to a stable outlet. The Spry Brothers have installed many grass waterways across their farms. On their home farm alone, there are 10 grassed waterways. In addition, they have promoted the construction of grassed waterways on other ground that they farm. In 2010, they constructed a large, shallow wildlife area spanning 3.6 acres. A shallow wildlife area is open wetland created to provide habitat for ducks, geese, other birds, reptiles, amphibians, as well as many mammals. A shallow wildlife area can be fed by capturing runoff from rain or natural springs. Historically, ponds have served many conservation purposes, assisting with erosion and sediment control, creating habitat for fish and wildlife, providing a source of water for fire control, and also providing recreational opportunities. With the assistance of the district, the Spry Brothers installed their first pond in 1963 on the home farm. Since that time, several other ponds have been constructed. 2 were developed on Singerly Road Farm in 1967 and in 1972. The final pond was constructed on the Grove Neck Road Farm in 1989. In 2010, Steve reached out to the district to begin the process of maintaining and reconstructing the older Singerly Road farm ponds again. In 2013, Spry Brothers began construction of a large equipment building and shop. As with any new construction, stormwater management for the site needed to be addressed. Concurrently, the district had been awarded a Conservation Innovation Grant to assist with the development of stormwater management practices that work in unison with agricultural sites. Through a collaborative effort with the district, Spry Brothers installed a pilot best management practice to address runoff from the new impervious area. Runoff from the roof and driveways were directed to this pilot infiltration practice. After a hurricane, Corky raised concerns regarding the Big Elk Creek and the stability of its banks where it runs through the farm. The district assessed the erosion and developed a plan for stabilization. The watershed contributing to this area begins in Pennsylvania and encompasses over 55 square miles of drainage. Due to the extensive drainage area and stream flows, engineering assistance was requested from the Natural Resource Conservation Service's national headquarters. In 2019, Spry Brothers completed the stream stabilization project, which helped improve water quality in the creek and downstream in the bay. Through this project, Spry Brothers stabilized 419 feet of stream bank using 813 tons of rock. Along with the stabilization of the banks, diverse stream habitats were also created. A riparian buffer was planted at the top of the stream bank, covering 1.1 acres. This riparian buffer includes 300 trees consisting of native Maryland species, including black walnut, sycamore, persimmon, and white oak. The buffer helps stabilize the banks of the Big Elk Creek and also acts as a habitat and wildlife corridor. The trees provide shelter and food for many native animals. Providing wildlife habitat is important to the Spry Brothers. In 2023, the Spry Brothers installed a new grass waterway near a wet corner of the home farm. A 4-inch tile line was placed on either side of the waterway to enhance vegetation and to direct excess groundwater to the lined rock outlet. The tile dries the wet spots and prevents gully erosion from forming. The Spry Brothers also use advanced agronomic best management practices on their farms to enhance soil health and reduce inputs. Such practices include conservation tillage, no-till, crop rotation, nutrient management, and the use of cover crops. Planting cover crops is one of the most impactful ways farmers can reduce soil erosion, improve soil health, and protect water quality. Cover crops slow water runoff, allowing it to be infiltrated into the soil, while the roots keep the soil structure intact. Cover crops lock up excess nutrients, while replenishing others when used as a mix. This year, the Spry Brothers planted 2,758 acres of wheat as cover crop, making them the largest cover crop participant through the Cecil Soil Conservation District. Corky says that the Spry Brothers have been using cover crops since before the state program began. In addition to their own farms, Spry Brothers have been involved in the implementation of conservation practice on their rented ground, promoting and spreading the use of conservation throughout the agricultural landscape of Cecil County. In a conversation with the district about his farming and conservation values, Corky said, "When you farm someone's land, you don't just treat it like your own, you treat it better. Don't just meet expectations, exceed them." He also said, "Conservation is damned important." This sentiment has been passed down from previous generations, as Bill and Julian were honored by the district in 1987. A passion for working the land runs through the Spry brothers' history. Corky says that Bill and Julian Spry didn't just farm to live, they lived to farm. And he continues that he and Steve are the luckiest people in this part of the world as they continue this tradition and pass these values down to the next generation. The Cecil Soil Conservation District honors the Spry brothers for their passion for farming and their commitment to conservation.